Hi guys, welcome to my place and summer in Australia. I hope you can see me. It's very glary, but I've actually got nowhere else to do this video because I've got a full house because Christmas is coming up. Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's have a look under the category too much news, not enough gossip. Don Jr.'s inflatable fiancée, Kimberly Guilfoyle. Now, they've been engaged since 2020, turns out. There's a lot of people who would have been married and divorced twice in that time. It's kind of weird in itself. He's obviously got himself a new bit of fluff on the side, and probably as a sort of pleading to his dad, what can I do with Kimberly? I know, we'll send her to Greece, having insulted Greeks. And I was talking to some friends in Athens, and I said, "Well, what are people saying in Greece about this appointment?" Because she has no ambassadorial experience. And they said, "Look, we're Greeks. We remember insults for 500 years. No, that's twice as long as America's been a democracy. So how dare she have called Greeks freeloaders? Like no one works harder than first generation immigrants. And I was at school with the Greeks and Italians were part of the phalanx of immigrants who built white Australia, right? Lest we forget. Arr. Okay, so that's going to go down like a bag of wet sick. Anyway, the big news, I think, is Canada. So I want to do a bigger spread on Canada. So after the crack at calling Canada the 51st state and now referring to Trudeau as the governor of the 51st state, like rubbing it in. I'm hearing from my Canadian viewers, hi everyone, this is bringing Canada together when it was really fractured prior to this. Right, so he's actually done Trudeau a favour. I don't know it'll be enough to get him over the line, but it's not just bullying, insulting and puerile and destructive. It's fundamentally pointless. It's unbelievable how he thinks you can retain the power that the United States has only achieved for, let's remind ourselves, for the last 70 odd years of superpower. And you didn't do it by insulting and spitting on your allies. I think you'll find, and I don't think you have to be a history doyen to find that out. Let's have a good look at Canada. Let's have a look. The dynamics in Canada, which haven't been pretty for all sorts of reasons. You know, everyone's suffering with this drift to the right or a lurch to the right. So Canada hasn't been immune. So let's have a look what all this business means for Canada. Oh, sorry, I'm improvising here. Okay, let's have a look. I hope you can see this. Oh, all right. Now, the first card out, Magician. I think in this context, it's often my Jack Smith card. And, he was cut off at the knees. But the magician in this context, I think, may well be Trudeau himself, might be able to pull off a miracle, but in any event, pulling people together. So this page of wands is the speaker who really has something to say. And when this is a young person here speaking, they actually have gravitas, right? And people are going to start to listen. There's going to be a bit more common ground than was the case even a couple of months ago. There'll be independent decisions on money making. I think it was the Premier of Ontario who said we can stop the energy flow to the US, right? Interesting. This is new ways of earning money, essentially, because it's right next to the fool, new ways of doing things about money. So I think whereas last time Canada, like most places, sort of weathered the storm, and by the time the worst of the tariffs hit, Trump was out of power, etc. People are not going to wait around this time. They're going to forge new links, and I think Canada will forge new trading partners, probably with the BRICS, and will move from choppy waters into smoother waters. I certainly hope so. But I want to just do a few extra cards on Canada because you guys have been very loyal to this channel, and also because Australians and Canadians have this sort of affinity, like we were all part of the Commonwealth, so we were colonized by the British, so we share a lot of our civic history and our governmental structure. So we've got a lot in common. So I'm just going to pull some extra cards from my Italian deck on Canada. What else do we need to know? And I didn't know till recently the US imports 60% of its oil from Canada. Does Trump know this? Do MAGA know this? No, because they don't know anything. They never let a fact get in the way of, a good gripe. They have to whinge about everything. Well, let's have a look. Canada. Oh, they're upside down. Ah, that's funny. Oh, this has a little bit extra to say here. This is the thief, the ladro. Okay, this is America trying to steal the sovereignty of Canada. Even symbolically, that's what they're doing. There are more episodes in this story. There's another chapter to be had. And melancholia. The US is going to regret this. And not only will they regret these unthought through, stupid tariffs, it's their ignorance is going to go full circle and bite them on the bum. Unfortunately for my American viewers, and you're the majority here on this channel, you'll be dragged through it backwards yourself, like. So please don't think I'm not sympathetic. Really. Okay. So now the next thing I wanted to get to, I want to talk about Christopher Wray and the FBI. But first, just a little bit more about Elon's extraordinary self-appointed role as, what is he, patsy to the president? What is his role? So what's he thinking? Let's just do a quick look on. He's obviously moved into Mar-a-Lago, at least for now. What's he doing there? I mean, I digress. Sorry, new viewers, I digress a lot. Here you have him in charge of this mythical department, how to cut money from people who can't afford to lose programs and money. That's his job, to be the ultimate prick of the universe. He is the welfare queen, to end all welfare queens. Why is it that people resent spending money supporting a single mother with 2 or 3 kids, but they're happy to give more money to Elon billionaires? It's like socialism is fine for the rich and capitalism for the poor. I mean, that's the American dynamic. So this will all be done in the name of the debt. But of course, the debt's public. You, the American people, carry the debt. The wealth is private. So less than 1% own over 50% of the wealth. I was horrified during the week um, to look at some of these stats. I think 78% of Americans are struggling payday to payday. That's a very high official percentage. Okay, the muskrat. What's his end game? What's his obstacle? Oh, I never get reversals. How interesting is that? Um, I find this very strange. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised. This is indicating to me Elonia, the muskrat, is actually unhappy. He is deeply wounded because he had one of those brutal, rich fathers. And trust me, it might sound good to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth, but it rarely is. Terrible fathers make terrible sons who then make terrible leaders. Okay, we know he's the worst boss in the world because he's a bigger employer than Trump. Otherwise, Trump would be up there with him. Ooh. Now, why is he there in this weird capacity? He's working on every connection that can be milked from it. We should not be surprised. He's got the platform because he bought it. This is literally the twittering. You might hear some birds behind me. We've got a lot of birds here. Um, with the Page of Swords. But this is the interesting one. Now, the Two of Pentacles guy symbolically juggling pentacles. But it's also a manipulative person doing this. Now, here's the kicker. It was reversed. You could watch this channel for 2 years and not see another reversal, right? That's how rare they are. So his manipulations are failing. In other words, it's what a lot of people have said, two narcissists, in the same space, not likely to work very well. Okay, so now I wanted to have a look at Christopher Wray's sudden resignation from the FBI. Not that he was the best head of the FBI, but it still has left the gate open for the ridiculous cartoon appointment of Kash Patel. It is, you've got to laugh or you'd cry, right? It is such an appalling appointment. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the FBI. We've got to remember here too, we're all grown-ups on this channel. So let's not romanticize it. Sort of the Men in Black get this, thanks to Will Smith and others, there's this sort of thing that the FBI are always the good guys. Well, if you look at their history, in the 50s, they were complicit with McCarthyism. They were directed to do this surveillance of everybody and were very zealous about it. 50s going into the 60s, they did repressive things to the civil rights movement, that are legendary and well reported. 60s going into the 70s, they did the same. They were particularly active. And I think it's not too big a word to say vicious with the Native American communities, because the 70s was a time, well, you had the Black Panthers in the 60s. Imagine now if uniformed African Americans with rifles came out. So imagine, right? But they were very down on the Black Panthers, obviously, but also with the Native American communities, very, very interventionist and repressive. And there are many activists who paid the price instead of getting due process. They simply didn't. and this was driven by the FBI. And I'm talking about people like John Trudell, the activist, who I had the privilege of meeting some years ago. You've got Leonard Peltier still in jail since the 70s for a murder he maintains he did not commit, and so on. So let's not romanticize the FBI. But what Trump has done for us all is things that, as lefties, we used to rail against. It was like, oh, thank God there's some legal guardrails, So suddenly all these institutions became massively important in a different way. So will the FBI be used to carry out revenge behaviors and for the bad, or have they got a plan? What's going to happen with the FBI going forward? FBI going forward. Let's have stickle. Now, got a lot of pentacle cards here. This is, I would say, the upper echelons of the FBI. What are we going to do? How can we put some fences around this guy? How can we limit the damage? How are we going to approach it? I think they are taking it seriously. What they're up against is conflict amongst themselves. You can imagine it's a vast organization. There'd be a key number of, massively important players, but they can't quite agree. Do we do this? Do we do that? Do we stop doing this? Where's the line? We'll comply unless we're asked to do X. Those sort of conversations going on. I think with this King of Swords, with swords, to paraphrase Superman, life, liberty, and the American way, or what was it? You can tell me in the comments. I've momentarily forgotten. Someone will emerge of enormous strength within the FBI. So it will not be Kash Patel, but it'll be someone whose job it is to sit on his head, effectively. Be someone, could be a legal, right, with the sword of justice, who will do their utmost to maybe relay what he's thinking of doing and stuff to other legal people or whatever. There will be legal resistance to being asked to do illegal things. I'm so pleased to report on that. Okay, they will reach a compromise. What are we going to do? Well, we at least have to do that, right? So it's a communication has to be had. They're going to keep their powder dry. I don't think the upper echelons can trust all. It's a huge organization. You're going to have Trump supporters in there. You're going to have old school conservatives in there. It's by definition a complex organization. So I think it's going to be the top 4 or 5, might even be 2 or 3, who will be making plans but not letting on. Outcome was the 9 of Pentacles, hopes and wishes. So I think tarot isn't good with timing, but I'm going to say it'll be all right maybe for the first 6 months or a year. But also, as we know, a week is a long time in politics, and the next however many months going forward, etc., everything could change. But I think they're going to hold the line for now and not want to completely get on their knees over this. Now, Michael Moore. I love Michael Moore. Okay. He's come out about the shooting of the CEO, and I think he put it better than anyone else, really, in the sense of, no, we are not supporting a violent act. No. However, the anger that was directed at the head of the insurance company is justifiable. So let's just separate. Righteous anger is not the same as saying, well, therefore anything can happen. No. However, it has its place and people should be angry. I was horrified to see, I think it was only yesterday I saw approximately 100 million Americans are in medical debt. That might not be a surprise to you guys, but it was gobsmacking to me. So do you remember with Sicko when he brought out that documentary? And Bernie Sanders, bless his cotton socks, he tried over and over to explain to Americans it wasn't a question of money. Why? Because Americans per capita pay more than any other country, including the first 20, 25 democratic countries that have universal health care. In other words, Americans individually pay more than Australians, Italians, French, Germans, Dutch, UK to not have health care. I think that's a particular achievement. Okay, just wanted to say. But also in this, the consulting giant McKinsey & Co. have just been fined $650 million for helping Purdue Pharma generate huge opioid revenues. Then, prior to that, they'd already been fined $1 billion. How much money must they actually make if they can lose $1.5 billion in fines? That gives you some idea of the scale of these industries. So let's see. My point, sorry, a bit too much digressing. I apologize. Let's have a look. Will Americans hold this anger from this moment that is accenting what everybody knows is an unjust system? So will this move the dial? Will more Americans speak up or act or lobby or whatever? Will this move the dial on healthcare? Let's have a look. Okay. All right, very mixed. Not at all surprised. The cards are complicated and mixed up. Starting with, everyone has a different point of view. Everyone. Right, so that makes it really hard. Okay. These companies are used to being able to rip off people with impunity and just crank up the profits. Thank you, Nixon. Thank you to others, the marvelous Reagan, everyone else who contributed to this situation. There is a light here. I asked, would it have some impact? The star is absolutely precious in terms of what the US symbolically represents. So that it has turned up on the top of the reading. I think social media, this will fly as an issue, but people have their hands tied because the American society has largely bought into this idea that this is the only way to do healthcare and it would cost more to do it any other way. No. Instead of paying these companies, you actually pay nurses and doctors. Imagine that. You actually put more beds in hospitals. Can you conceive of such a thing? Right, so people, the key is in this card. This is self-imposed. In other words, if people realize there is a way through the swords, go back to some of those Bernie Sanders. This is a time, this is a window for the US to address it. I'm not massively optimistic, because I'm a health sociologist and I've had to teach the American health system for 20 years, so I know probably too much about it to be comfortable. But keep the light. Keep the light. Oh, bless you guys. Going out on a giggle, have you seen the wonderful footage of Macron? I think Trudeau's doing it too, but of Macron and I think it was the leader of Morocco or someone. So what's going through the heads of state everywhere are these ridiculous handshakes. After the Yeti grabs people by their arms and tries to throw them around, it is such a primitive exchange. And it's such a good example of toxic masculinity. And it's so bad because it's unveiled. But heads of states are having a hilarious time with it. So you've got to get a giggle where you can. Let me know what you're thinking, guys. Bye for now. Ciao, ciao. Got to get out of this sun.